Righty then, welcome back to the channel. Stephen Howson. 5 things that we learned watching Manchester United win the Manchester derby. In at number 1, Ten Hag is learning fast. We were incomparably more solid than the last time we played Manchester. They put 6 goals past us. Yesterday, they only had 1 shot. And the 11 was very, very close. The fact you played Luke Shaw at centre-half, Malacia, who, has not exactly big game tested at the moment, Wan-Bissaka, who's been basically on a shelf for most of the season, and Varane, who's, didn't survive the last derby with an injury. That was the back 4. 1 shot conceded. City dominated possession, as you'd expect. It was 70%. I've seen 71% as well, to 30 or to 29%. Watching the game, it didn't quite feel like that was how much possession they had. It didn't feel like United were constantly camped, because United were breaking forward and United were creating good chances. United had 4 big chances of the game that could and perhaps should have been put away. Obviously, 2 of them were. But it didn't quite feel like we was overwhelmingly destroyed. They didn't take the game away from us. Even when we went 1-0 down, it didn't feel like the sort of impervious sort of City performance. Now, they had 727 passes, so it was over 700 anyway. The 2 centre-halves both had a Rodri and might have been a Kanji had over 100 passes. The entire back 4 combined had over 300 passes. So that tells you something about where they were holding their possession. Now, for me, that's reverted. When Manchester City first hired Pep Guardiola, they held possession in their defensive line and they didn't hold it in midfield. What made City as good as they've been lately is that they held possession in their midfield, and the centre-halves weren't used to constantly recycle the ball the way they have been a little bit this season, and certainly were yesterday against us. And I thought Manchester United's press and midfield was a big reason for that. I thought Fred was a nuisance, wasn't he? Casemiro, Fred, Eriksen, they all played their part, and Bruno as well, all played their part. Casemiro in particular, I thought he was Ten Hag's leader on the pitch. And even if he couldn't get near De Bruyne for their goal, I thought it was a brilliant performance. Number 2, Bruno revival. Now, he has to play in the middle, but I don't think moving him over to the side in the big games necessarily hurts us. I predicted that in my preview, and I was pretty pleased that it was, I did Fred into the midfield for the extra bit of steel and moved Bruno over to the right-hand side where you can get some crossing and stuff from him. But he does imbalance when he plays on that side. And it can only be in the sort of emergency where you're up against a big team and you've got to try and pull a result out. If you want to dominate the game and you want to create chances in our sort of plan A textbook way of doing it, Bruno has to play through the middle. When he moved into the centre, after Garnacho came on, Anthony went to the right, so much more balance. His goal came from the middle. And then he created the second, playing Garnacho in from the central position. I actually still don't think it's the wrong thing to do, to play 60 minutes of him on the right-hand side to make sure that you're in the fight. Because we didn't have a midfield in the derby at the Etihad, and that was one of the main reasons why I'm thinking Bruno's got to play, but I'm going to move him over to the right-hand side where he can maybe come in and bolster the midfield, because I want the energy that Fred can bring us. But Bruno, arguably, man of the match. Number 3, Marcus Rashford, match winner. All week was saying he can't continue. Can he continue this run against Manchester? If he can, wow. But can he? That's a big ask, isn't it? Not only does he continue the scoring run, he scores the winner. Something in that. There's a little bit of extra spicy sauce on that. 16 goals this season. 7 in a row that he's now scored. First United player since Ruud van Nistelrooy. Injury worry? Well, yeah, actually. I'd like to know that it was nothing. I'm hoping it was nothing, because without him, 3 points against Arsenal suddenly doesn't look as exciting or as likely. Went down in the first half. Don't know if it was his hip, his hamstring. Afterwards, he said it's a little knock. He played on in the second half. I hope he wasn't jabbed up to do that, because that is going to have implications later down the line, or potentially even this weekend. But it shows the dangers, and it shows how fragile it is. And I'll talk about this more in the next point. But it shows how fragile this Manchester United side is. That one player, like, I don't know if you were the same as me when you was watching this yesterday, but as soon as Marcus looked like he was going off, the way he was banging the floor, you're like, he's coming off. The mood just collapsed. Because we realised we can't beat Manchester City without Marcus Rashford. Which on one hand is beautiful that we've now got a player we can rely on. But on the other hand, it's worrying because we don't have a lot of them. Number 4, title charge. Well, for me, no. Because the last point highlighted it in a big way. Without Marcus Rashford, who can get injured, or Casemiro, we don't have a title charge. The squad at the moment is too thin. What I would say at the moment is Ten Hag's done a hell of a job to have us even talking like this. Ten Hag has done a hell of a job to have us within 1 point of Manchester City. Now, we're 6 points behind Arsenal. 6 points is turnoverable. But Arsenal play later today against Tottenham, and Tottenham are not in the best of form. A draw or a defeat for Arsenal, and we beat them next week, takes it down to 3 points. At which time we'll still only be 1 point off Manchester City. Now, if that happens, I think you would have to say you're in a title race. We've seen Manchester United blow a 12-point lead later in the season, far, far, far later in the season than this. And you've seen us overcome 12-point leads from Newcastle and others at this later in the season. So to be arguing against us being in a title race right now would literally just be trying to save face for when the inevitable happens and we don't win the title. But there's a difference between being a challenger and being someone who should win the league. Now, Manchester City should win this league. But it's looking like they might not. Arsenal are in some incredible form that I absolutely didn't predict. I had them finishing 8th. A little bit of that was to try and get some Arsenal fans' backs up, and it worked. I didn't think to be honest, I wasn't even sure they'd finish top 4. I thought they might be 5th, right? But saying, you might just miss out on top 4 doesn't get as many people's backs out as saying, I think you're shit and you're coming 8th. So they absolutely surprised me. But if Manchester United, the performance that you've seen us put up against City, we've beaten Arsenal, we've beaten Liverpool, we've beaten Spurs, we should have beaten Newcastle, and that still sticks in my neck a little bit because they were shit, and we should have beat them. All of these performances, it's not just that we've got results. We've got results in the past and haven't had the performance. We've had performance and results. There's a confidence about this United side that feels more genuine than it has against most of the teams or most of the managers that have come before Erik ten Hag. We are on the up. There's a whole half of a season to come where we'll lose and so will our opponents. But it's the first time post-Christmas Manchester United have been this close to the team on the top of the table. And point number 5, Weghorst is coming straight in. And what if he is as good as the rest of the decisions that Erik ten Hag has made? What if he alone is capable of making the difference and getting 3 points at the Emirates next week? Marshall came off at half-time. There was no focal point in the first half with him on. It's very clear what this team needs. And I think it's clear what Weghorst can offer. When this team gets a focal point up top, it might be scary. It's the one obvious deficiency in the side at the moment. That and maybe someone from the right-hand side creating goals to the level that we think that they can. But maybe that would be aided by someone being a bit more of a focal point. I expect Weghorst in the 9 next week to start. And I'm excited to see what he can offer this Manchester United side. Because this winning run that we're on, if it continues for a few more weeks, I mean, we've got a hell of a run. And we are in all 4 competitions. Are we going to win all 4 competitions? No. We've got a hell of a task against Barcelona. I think we get through to the League Cup final, where I actually do make us favourites to win the League Cup. After that, there's too far to go in the FA Cup to start saying anything about that just yet. And even though I have to admit now, we're in a title race, I think we're the third, maybe even fourth favourites for that. So we are the big outsiders, but we're on the start line, because this is where a season starts. Fergie used to always say it. The league starts after Christmas. I think he might have actually even said the league starts in April, but the league generally starts after Christmas. And as soon as you hit that, that's when it starts to go. We're in a title race, but we're not a title challenging team just yet for me. If Ten Hag's able to deliver one trophy and finish strongly, I think most United fans would just take that and be like, hell of a start. Let's have it next year. Hell of a start. But you never know what's going to happen in football. See you in the next one. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.